Welcome to Time for Hope, a faith-based mental health program. I'm Dr. Freda Cruz, your host, and I am being joined today by psychotherapist, counselor, and seminary professor, Dr. Richard Winter, and we will be discussing his book titled When Life Goes Dark and subtitled Finding Hope in the Midst of Depression. Since the failure of our first parents in the Garden of Eden, mankind has been stalked by this profoundly crippling condition, and it knows no boundaries related to who and when. 1 in every 8 persons across the globe will become the victim of a severe depressive episode during their lifetime, and this includes Christians and non-Christians alike. But hope can be pursued and experienced. To hear more, stay with us. And Richard, it's great having you back on Time for Hope.
Well, it's good to be with you again, Freda.
It has been a few years, and they have passed swiftly, haven't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I'm going to tell you in front of all of my viewers what I said off camera, and that is you have done one of the most comprehensive job, I don't know, I guess I would call it a job or writing about depression that I believe I have ever seen.
Well, that's good to hear. I hope it's not too dense and too difficult to understand.
Well, I actually could see myself in your class, and also it brought back my own training and gave me a great review and things that I probably had forgotten I had learned at some time or other. But no, you've done a great job also putting it in a way that our viewers, the average viewer out there, could read this book, and it would. No, I don't think it's too dense, and I don't think it's too complex at all for the average person.
Well, that's good. That's what I was trying to do, and it's true that I do use it in my class when I'm teaching counselors and teaching pastors as well.
Well, then I would say it provides that for them. And then what I liked was your self-disclosure. As you teach, and as I was taught, to be very careful with self-disclosure and always try to be appropriate with our self-disclosure in counseling. But in your book, you did the self-disclosing, telling your own story of having gone through depression. And like you bring out in your book, who hasn't?
That's right, yeah.
At some time in their life, who hasn't experienced some level of depression, and some worse than others, and then some poor people, bless their hearts, are left with it most of their lives.
That's right, yes. And thankfully it was never very deep or for very long for me, but it gave me a glimpse into the sort of deep, dark places of life that some people spend a lot of time in, and I have much more empathy and understanding of that now, having touched it a little bit myself. There was one point just not that long ago when I said to my wife, I feel like a ship that's going down, that's sinking, and it felt like my whole body was being dragged into some vortex of darkness for a while through various circumstances that occurred in my life that seemed to precipitate that.
So would you call that would be a reactive depression then? Would you say it was a reactive depression that you were experiencing? You were reacting, it was causing a stress within your body, but it also still affects our chemicals and our brain, doesn't it?
That's right. Yeah, I think for me it was reactive, and the other time that I talk about in the introduction years ago when there were a lot of losses in my life, and my sister died in childbirth, and my wife got cancer, and all sorts of things happened around that time. So it was partly reaction to that. It was also reacting with my own unique vulnerability and sensitivities, which is partly psychological, partly biochemical. And for some people, they have a much greater biochemical and psychological vulnerability, and they may be plunged into deep depression even with very few external circumstances pushing them down, especially people who are vulnerable to bipolar or manic depression type of depression.
And then we have those, we get the word resilience. There are those that are more resilient to the stresses of life. And then, but grief, when there is grief from a significant loss, as a general rule, there is always depression for a period of time. Have you found that true?
Well, it's interesting. In the chapter on grief, I talk about the differences in the way that people respond to loss, either the loss of a person or the loss of a house or something that's really significant to them.
Of course, it would have to do with what kind of loss, and whether it's a finite loss or an infinite loss.
And some people come through that without a whole lot of depression or deep sadness, and most people experience some deep period of sadness. Just recently I lost my 99-year-old mother, and we'd been preparing for that for a long time because she was so old, and but there was a deep, just on the day she died, I was just overwhelmed with a deep, deep sadness and sort of sobbing grief. But since then, there hasn't been a whole lot of grief. There's just a thankfulness for her life. Whereas I think when there's a grief where someone dies totally unexpectedly, out of the blue, say a child, then it may go on for much longer. And for about 10% of people who experience grief, that will go on into what we would call a clinical depression, which is different from grief. And I think grief is a very normal response to sad things that happen in a broken world. It's not an abnormality. It's Jesus was grieving when he lost his friend Lazarus. And so it doesn't need to be treated, grief doesn't need to be treated as an illness in the way that serious clinical depression does.
But when it's abnormal grief and goes on for too long, and there's not the help and the support and so on and so forth, it can become and lead one into a severe depression. So, but with your mom, that would be anticipatory grief, so that comes easier than the acute grief that you mentioned in the sudden loss of a child, or just recently from a restaurant that I attend frequently. One of the waitresses worked that like one day, that night, went to bed and died in her sleep at 38 years old.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So can you imagine a husband and a family and so forth? That would be the acute grief, and because I had talked to some of her co-workers, and they said that she was fine that day.
So there'd be shock and disbelief, and it would take a while for that, probably for the deepest pain of that to really hit the person, wouldn't it? It might be some days, weeks later that they would really begin to feel the pain of that.
But I think what we're trying to say, that when we look at depression, we're looking at a biological component. We're looking at a physiological component, which of course the biological and physical. So body, soul, mind, and spirit. Just part,
the whole person.
The whole person.
Yeah. And I think it's very important to distinguish, severe depression from the milder disappointments and discouragements and we all have times when we get up in the morning and we feel a bit blue and it's a bad day. But serious depression needs to be distinguished from those, because those are things that happen to everyone. And the danger is, I think, today is that we're losing the language. When you have advertisements, commercials on television, for anyone who feels a bit discouraged, depressed, anxious, then they need antidepressants. They need Prozac or whatever it is, the latest antidepressant. Then people tend to think that all dark moods need treatment as if they were an illness. And that's not true at all. It's only the deepest type of depression that really needs to be recognized. And a lot of people don't recognize it, they don't know the signs of it, they don't get adequate help when they are in that very dark place of life. Because it often comes on slowly and gradually, and it's like the proverbial frog in the kettle. You know, the stress gradually builds up, and you don't know quite how bad you are until someone else points it out to you, or you get into some crisis in life.
That also is another thing, and I'm not sure that I picked up on that in your book, a depression that comes with aging, as one faces the reality.
And just to say that, yes, I think many people, you know, in older age, you're losing so many things, and it's hard to come to terms with the loss of health, the loss of friends, maybe the loss of one's independence, the need to be on lots of medications. All of those things, I think, make life a lot more difficult. My mother-in-law always said, as you may have heard, old age is not for sissies, and there's a lot of truth in that. It's a tough time of life, unless you have a very good caring family and a lot of help and good, basically good health is a huge gift.
Strong faith.
And a strong
faith in where in the Lord and His Word and where they're going, and
that was certainly true for my mother, thankfully.
That she had that
She
strong
did indeed.
faith. Yes. Well, it's time for a break, and we will be right back. Dr. Havens, I'm very happy to have you. I just thought about it, and I thought you would be a tremendous resource to share your knowledge about depression and the antidepressants that you use in your practice. You're in a full-time practice in Roswell, Georgia, and founder of The Ark. And actually, we could say that you are a Christian psychiatrist and so forth. So I have some questions about medication, and I know this is one of your areas of expertise. What kinds of antidepressants are there? In other words, there's a range of them.
There are. There are, and most people are familiar with what we call the SSRIs and the SNRIs. They're serotonin helpers and serotonin and norepinephrine helpers, and those are the main neurotransmitters involved in what we call depression. There are also a number of other ones. Monoamine oxidase inhibitors, that's what you see on the when you go to the drugstore and they say, be careful, high blood pressure, that sort of thing, although almost nobody prescribes those anymore. They are very good. Then there's the older kind, the tricyclics. And those aren't used a lot because of side effects. We have this new generation of serotonin helpers. Zoloft, Prozac was the first one, then Zoloft, Paxil, Celexa, Lexapro, and those are used a lot. And then the latest one is Vibryd, Viibryd. And I actually asked somebody once in the pharmaceutical industry how they come up with the names, and they sit around a table and they throw out sound bites. And whatever fits for them, that's what they call it. That's why the names are so unusual. But I think there's a misunderstanding about what depression is, and I think that's the main, it contributes to the main part of the confusion, is that they're not happy pills in the first place. And depression is really a neurologic problem, and we need another name for it. It needs to be serotonin receptor downregulation syndrome or something like that, because that's really what it is, and then it's manifested by sometimes bad feelings and sadness, but sleep, appetite, energy, concentration, suicidal thoughts, and when you have those things together, you have what we call a clinical depression.
Let me interrupt you, and let's talk about serotonin and norepinephrine, and then there's dopamine also. About them being chemicals that are involved.
Right, they're neurotransmitters. So the brain cells talk to each other by having an electrical impulse come down the cell, and then it sends a little chemical messenger to the next one. And those chemical messengers are what we're talking about. And and there are a lot of them. And we don't know, we think we know a fair amount about serotonin and norepinephrine. Now, dopamine is the one that's involved in the frontal lobes with ADD. That's a different neurotransmitter. Okay? But what we do with the antidepressants is is the serotonin is actually, it's the receptor for serotonin is the issue. It sort of down-regulates and turns off so it doesn't transmit properly. So we flood that little area where the neurotransmitter is with serotonin, and it helps the receptors turn back on. Now, once the serotonin is released, the body repackages it to use again. So we block that reuptake process. And that's really basically how the antidepressants function, is they're reuptake inhibitors.
We always appreciate your joining us on Time for Hope. We're talking with Dr. Richard Winter about his book, When Life Goes Dark. So we were talking meds when we went off on break, and you wanted, and I agree, to pick up with that at this point, because first of all, it's been debatable, it's been a controversy among Christians. The whole thing about depression has been an issue in the Christian world. It isn't, I don't think, today nearly to the point that it has been in the past. In the past, at one time, it was believed to be, if you were depressed, that you were out of God's will, or that you had, like Job, you had committed some great sin you weren't sharing with anybody, or, you know, something along that line. But then you and I both know that some of the greatest saints had great, terrible periods of depression. Martin Luther would stay tucked away in a dark room for 2 weeks at the time, being so depressed he couldn't come out and face the world. In fact, do you know the story about his wife dressing in the dark clothes, the black clothes, and going into his room?
No, I don't know that one.
While he was doing this, and he it jarred him, and that's what she had in mind. And he said, "What in the world are you doing dressed like that?" She says, "Well, you're acting like God is dead, and I thought I dressed the part."
That's great. No, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, but a great man like Martin Luther, depression can put him down. There's no one exempt if it gets severe enough. You agree with me on that?
Yes, that's true. And it's interesting, too, as you look back in the writings of the Puritans and the Reformers, many of them wrote about this type of depression that was a different quality from the normal ups and downs of life. You know, when people feel that God is far away, their prayers aren't answered, the Bible seems meaningless, everything seems, they don't take joy in anything in life anymore. They often can't eat, they can't sleep. They're very anxious and fearful and feel that they're attacked by the devil. And that's a quality of depression that they recognized even then probably had some biological cause, just as we today believe it's a mixture of causes of psychological and biological and spiritual and social. There are many reasons, and so we have to address each of the causes when you're trying to help people with this sort of level of depression. You have to try and assess what aspect of it is the most significant for them at that particular time. Now Luther, going back to him, he was a pretty perfectionist, rather obsessive individual, and I'm glad he was in some ways, because he wrote a huge amount to our benefit. But I think that was also some of his undoing, that he expected a lot of himself. And often lived more under law, especially before he was a Christian, than under grace. And some of those old habits, his perfectionist habits, maybe lingered on after he was a believer.
Yes, you've written a book on perfection. Remember, you did it on my show.
I did,
when you were here, that we can perfect ourselves to death. I classify myself as a recovering perfectionist, and I've been recovering for a long time, because it's easy to slip back into it. But going now, when I think we're talking of all these people, I believe Thomas Boston was another one, and there was another one, and I can't remember his name, that actually went out to commit suicide. He was one of, I believe, a hymn writer, and the carriage took him. He was going to jump off a bridge, which you bring out in your book. That's one of the, and having experience with people that were suicidal myself, they do look for bridges very often to jump from. But the fog set in, and the carriage driver couldn't find the bridge, and he brought him back where he. Where they started, and the Lord used that to I guess, shake him back into
some of these people, I think, were profoundly depressed for a long time. Others maybe went through periods, and certainly in my own dark places, there were times when I thought of, it would be nice to end it all. I don't like this pain. But I knew that I couldn't do that because of my wife and my family, and I think of people like Elijah and Jonah and Job and Moses. They each got to a place of crisis in their lives, all for completely different reasons. And I explore this in the book. Each for completely different reasons, where they said, "Lord, I've had enough. I want to die." And I don't think they were people who were clinically depressed, but they got so down and so burned out that there were moments when they felt, I just can't take this anymore. And we go through those moments. And some people, unfortunately, impulsively, may try to take an overdose or jump off a bridge during those times.
I've had many that started to do it, but they could hear me. I would program them, and they could hear me coming through saying, "You don't need to do this. You don't need to do this. Call so-and-so or call me," or whatever. But let's get back. When we're talking of all these people, they had to go through this without the meds that we have today that can be effective. As you brought out off camera, they're not always effective, but we do know that medication and counseling together are more effective. Meds by themselves, as a general rule, are not effective unless they're also getting appropriate and very adequate counseling.
That's absolutely true. And I think it's interesting. I mean, there are many pastors, I think, who don't encourage people soon enough to get on medication when they're depressed. And there are many doctors and mental health workers who probably encourage them too quickly to get onto medication.
And just hand them the meds and don't tell them to go get counseling.
And then the commercials on television tend to foster that attitude. And of course, the pharmaceutical companies are funding the research on depression very often, and they tend to want people to use their antidepressants. And so there's been a lot of debate in recent years about the effectiveness. So they've compared antidepressants with placebo, with inert
that was
pills.
Tremendous in your book.
And they found that that antidepressants tend to, there's evidence that antidepressants certainly work with people with serious depression, but it's debatable whether they are better than placebo in milder to moderate depression. Now,
if a person believes that it's helping, that's where the brain.
And there may be value in that.
Yes, there may be value in that. We're going to have to go away for the week. We're going to have to go off for a week and leave them hanging with this. But I don't know of a better way, actually, than you bringing up the placebo effect, and that goes into the brain mechanisms that are at work or not at work. Both ways in depression. So we'll just kind of throw that out and ask them to make sure that they are with us again next week as we try to pick up right exactly where we're leaving off today. We don't want to leave them hanging. And we also want to go out, Richard, saying that however severe depression is, there's hope.
Exactly.
One does not have to live with it for all of their life.
And there are many ways of getting help with depression.
Many ways of getting help, and our Heavenly Father, who created us, knows us, is always there. He never leaves us, never abandons us, and especially is not going to abandon us, and is not it's not that he would not discipline us. Right. He will allow it, but he would not discipline us and like that without having some tremendous purposes in mind for us.
He uses those things for good.
He uses those things for good. So as we started out, and Hosea says, we started out with the whole idea that this pain can be a door to hope.
A door of hope.
A door of hope, and that's what we want to leave our viewers with as they encourage them to pick up with us again next week. And we're going to be continuing our discussion on Dr. Winter's book, When Life Goes Dark. But I want to share something from a viewer. Don't go away. Dear Dr. Freda, please pray for my 44-year-old daughter. She was involved in Christian ministry and leadership for many years. She has been suffering with depression for the last 15 years, and the medications have not helped. She is not in church any longer and has no friends. Please pray for her healing, and we have already done that. We know that our Heavenly Father promises that He hears us when we pray. And then I have an encouraging note. Dear Dr. Freda, thank you for the great job you are doing for God. May the Lord bless the Time for Hope ministry, and thank you for that. May He bless you and keep you and shower His blessings on you. And so we appreciate the prayer requests, and I also appreciate the notes of encouragement that you send in to us. And when the Lord leads you to help us financially, we greatly appreciate that also.
A free fact sheet that contains additional information about today's topic is available upon request from our ministry. You can also receive a copy of today's resource for $12 plus $3 shipping and handling. To receive the free fact sheet or our guest's book or both, you may call us at 1-800-669-9133. Write us at Post Office Box 2169, Spartanburg, South Carolina 29304. Or visit our website at timeforhope.org. When you call or write, please prayerfully consider a donation to our ministry. Our ministry's mission is to offer hope to discouraged and hurting people. As we continue to give out messages of hope, you can become a member of our team by sending us a financial gift of any amount. When you send your gift to support Time for Hope, you are joining us in offering hope to many viewers who might believe there is no hope for their situation. And you're also enabling us to inform and inspire some viewers to expand our mission as they learn and in turn can minister more effectively to hurting people around them. To see this program again online, go to our website or find us on YouTube. Until next time, have a great week, and remember, it is time for hope.